Arman Qureshi traveled alone to Dubai for a simple wedding. And Zara Al-Mahdi thought it was just another case. But 15 days later, the police uncovered a chilling truth that no one saw coming. Arman Qureshi was not a man who usually made impulsive decisions. At 28, he had built a steady life as an IT consultant in Karachi. He was working long hours behind a screen, managing data systems for international clients. He preferred routines, enjoyed quiet evenings at home, and rarely traveled alone. But when an invitation arrived for a distant cousin's extravagant wedding in Dubai, something stirred in him. It wasn't just the prospect of witnessing a grand celebration. It was a chance to step out of his carefully measured life, to experience a world he had only seen in magazines and online videos. His friends noticed the unusual excitement. Arman had spent hours researching flight timings, hotel locations, and even the best taxi routes from the airport. He meticulously packed his luggage, folding shirts with precision, double-checking his passport and visa documents, and labeling his bags with neat tags. There was a nervous energy in his movements, an anticipation that his friends had rarely seen. "He's taking this seriously," one colleague had remarked, shaking his head. "Arman doesn't get excited about much, but this feels different." The night before his departure, Arman barely slept. He reviewed his itinerary multiple times, ensuring nothing was left to chance. At 3 a.m., he woke to check his bags once more, confirming that his passport, wallet, and boarding pass were secure. The city outside was still asleep as he hailed a taxi to the airport, a small suitcase rolling beside him. His mind was a mix of excitement and caution. Dubai was a foreign city, unfamiliar streets, unknown faces. Yet he felt confident in his preparations. Convinced that careful planning could protect him from the unexpected, the flight itself was uneventful. Though Arman found himself staring out of the window more than usual, below him, the landscapes shifted from the dense urban sprawl of Karachi to the endless deserts and sparkling coastlines of the UAE. The cityscape of Dubai unfolded as the plane descended, towering skyscrapers, sprawling shopping malls, and the endless shimmer of glass reflecting the bright sunlight. The enormity of the city made him feel small, yet invigorated, as though he was stepping into a place where anything could happen. Upon arrival, he collected his luggage and entered the airport lobby. The air conditioning a sharp contrast to the warm desert breeze outside. He booked a taxi to the hotel, carefully noting the receipt and confirming the driver's license plate. The streets of Dubai were bustling, filled with luxury cars and tourists from all over the world. He marveled at the orderliness, the cleanliness, and the sheer energy of the city, snapping a few pictures on his phone, though he would later wish he had taken more. When he reached the hotel, Arman checked in efficiently, handing over his passport and signing the required forms. The concierge, polite and professional, offered a map of the nearby area and a few recommendations for restaurants and local attractions. Arman nodded politely, placing the map carefully in his bag. He unpacked his essentials, checked the room's security features, and set out to familiarize himself with the wedding venue, eager to ensure he wouldn't get lost amid the sea of unfamiliar faces. The wedding itself was a spectacle of colors, music, and laughter. Arman's cousin greeted him warmly, introducing him to distant relatives who spoke in a mix of Arabic, Urdu, and English. Yet, amid the celebration, Arman couldn't shake a peculiar sense of detachment. There were moments when he felt oddly invisible, as if the crowd swallowed him whole. And despite the lively atmosphere, a quiet tension seemed to linger at the edges of his consciousness. He reassured himself it was just fatigue or the overwhelming nature of the city. But the feeling persisted. That evening, back at his hotel room, Arman sent a brief message to his family, assuring them of his safe arrival. Then, he set his phone aside, thinking he would rest and explore the city the following day. He didn't notice the subtle signs of something unusual. The taxi driver who had dropped him off had glanced at him a few times too many, and a shadowy figure had lingered near the hotel entrance. At the time, these details seemed inconsequential, easily dismissed as coincidence. But they were the first threads of a pattern that would soon unravel, drawing Arman into a chain of events that no amount of planning or caution could have predicted. By the next morning, He stepped into the sunlit streets of Dubai, ready to embrace the adventure ahead, unaware that the glittering city held secrets far darker than the bright lights suggested. He was about to travel alone into a situation that would test his courage, intelligence, and resilience in ways he could never have imagined. Arman's first few days in Dubai passed uneventfully. Yet quietly, a sense of unease began to creep in. He attended wedding functions, met relatives, and explored a few tourist spots, but the rhythm of the city felt strangely overwhelming. The streets were alive with people from every corner of the world, each in a hurry, each absorbed in their own lives. Arman, cautious and observant, noticed details others overlooked: the subtle way some strangers watched him in passing, the almost imperceptible movement of figures that seemed to appear where he least expected them. At the time, he dismissed these observations as paranoia, attributing them to fatigue or jet lag. But the seed of unease had been planted by the fifth day. Friends and family in Karachi began to notice something unusual. Arman had not responded to calls or messages for more than 24 hours. Initially, his family thought he was busy with wedding celebrations or sightseeing. But as hours turned into days, concern grew. Calls to the hotel came back with polite assurances that no guests by his name had reported any issues. Dubai's vast urban landscape suddenly felt like a maze, too complex for someone to simply vanish without leaving a trace. And yet Arman's absence was becoming impossible to explain. His cousin, who had invited him to the wedding, mentioned having seen him briefly at one of the wedding events. Arman had mingled quietly among the guests, exchanging nods and smiles, yet strangely, no one seemed to have a photograph of him. No one remembered conversations with him, and no video footage captured his presence. It was as if, despite attending the event, Arman had remained invisible to everyone around him. The more his family and friends tried to piece together his movements, the more fragmented the story became, each day adding another layer of worry and confusion. By the 10th day, the situation escalated. Arman had not checked into any hotel besides the one he had initially reserved, and the concierge confirmed that he had not requested room service or left the hotel for extended periods. His credit card had not been used, and his phone showed no activity beyond the initial messages sent upon arrival. It was as if he had vanished from the city entirely. Karachi police, contacted in desperation, assured his family that they would reach out to Dubai authorities. But the process was slow, tangled in bureaucratic procedures and jurisdictional boundaries. Every hour that passed without a lead intensified the fear in his family's hearts. Desperate for answers, his family hired a private investigator in Dubai named Zara Al-Mahdi. Zara was known for handling delicate cases that local authorities often struggled to solve. She approached Arman's disappearance with precision and patience, beginning by reviewing his digital footprint and tracing his last known movements. Within hours, she discovered irregularities. His passport, while officially stamped upon arrival, showed no exit record from the airport, and his luggage had disappeared from the hotel without explanation. Something about the sequence of events defied logic, suggesting that Arman's disappearance was not accidental, but intentional. A few days into Zara's investigation, she received an anonymous tip. A man matching Arman's description had been seen in Dira, one of Dubai's older districts, a crowded area with narrow streets and bustling markets. Security footage confirmed a brief appearance: Arman walking alongside a group of strangers, looking around with cautious curiosity. The footage, however, ended abruptly, cutting off mid-frame, as if the camera had been tampered with. The tip indicated more than a simple wandering tourist. It hinted at involvement with people who may have been waiting for him, watching him, and planning something. Zara's instincts told her that Arman's disappearance was layered, carefully orchestrated by someone who understood his habits. The calm, bustling city now seemed to harbor hidden dangers in every alley, every taxi ride. Every unfamiliar face became a potential piece of a puzzle she needed to solve quickly. Time was slipping away, and the longer Arman remained missing, the greater the risk that the trail would vanish entirely. She knew that in Dubai, a city of millions, a single misstep could make finding him impossible. By the 15th day, fear had transformed into urgency. What had started as a routine trip to attend a wedding had spiraled into a mystery. Arman was no longer just a missing person. He had become the central figure in a web of uncertainty, a man whose very existence in the city seemed to be shrouded in shadows. Every lead pointed towards something darker than a mere lost tourist. Something deliberate, something that required immediate action before it was too late. Zara Al-Mahdi knew that time was critical. Every day that passed without clues increased the chances that Arman Qureshi might slip further into danger. She began tracing his digital footprints with meticulous attention, analyzing every app, account, and social media profile he had used. It was then that she noticed something unusual. A dating app Arman rarely used showed activity during his disappearance. The profile, under his name, but not operated by him, had exchanged messages with someone identified only as S. The tone of the messages suggested meetings and promises, creating a chilling implication that Arman had been lured intentionally. Digging deeper, Zara discovered that Arman had rented a car under a false identity. It was a small, innocuous vehicle. But the method of rental was unusual for someone as cautious as Arman. He had never hidden personal information before, never taken risks with forged identification. The GPS data from the car revealed a route to the outskirts of Dubai, toward an abandoned industrial area far from tourist zones and hotel districts. The location was isolated, surrounded by empty warehouses and deserted streets, a place no visitor would ever venture without reason. When Zara visited the site, she immediately sensed something was wrong. Broken glass littered the ground, tire marks crisscrossed the dusty pavement, and faint stains suggested a struggle had occurred. She photographed everything carefully, knowing that any piece of evidence could prove critical. It became increasingly clear that Arman had not disappeared by accident. Someone had planned this meticulously, anticipating his movements and manipulating circumstances to draw him into a trap. Zara's investigation revealed more troubling details. Surveillance cameras from nearby streets and warehouses captured fleeting glimpses of a man resembling Arman. In the footage, he appeared to hesitate at the edge of a dark alley, then followed someone whose face was obscured. The sequence of images was brief and fragmented, ending abruptly as if someone had deliberately cut off the recording. Zara realized she was dealing with a criminal who not only targeted unsuspecting victims, but also took steps to erase any trace of their actions. The private investigator then examined Arman's communications. Messages on the dating app indicated that S had promised to show Arman something valuable, rare artifacts supposedly linked to the wedding's cultural traditions. Arman, trusting and curious, had agreed to meet. His inherent caution had been manipulated. His meticulous nature turned against him. The messages hinted at urgency and secrecy. With stressing that the meeting must occur in a private location away from the public eye, each piece of the puzzle added weight to a disturbing theory. Arman had walked into a well-laid trap. Unaware of the danger waiting for him, Zara cross-referenced financial records, discovering that Arman's bank account had been accessed remotely. With a small transfer made under suspicious circumstances, the transaction was quickly reversed, but it indicated that whoever had orchestrated the meeting had plans to exploit Arman's finances. The pattern was consistent with cases she had handled before: victims isolated in unfamiliar environments, lured with promises of trust and gain, then exploited or detained to force compliance. Arman's disappearance was no longer a mystery. It was a calculated crime. As Zara pieced together the timeline, she realized the significance of the abandoned industrial area. It was not just a location for a meeting. It was a controlled environment where the perpetrator could manipulate events, prevent witnesses, and cover tracks. Arman's careful planning had been nullified. He had entered a world where the rules were no longer his own. The implications were chilling. Every step he had taken, from booking the flight to attending the wedding, had been observed, predicted, and used against him. By the end of the third week, the investigation had evolved from a search for a missing person into a high-stakes pursuit of a criminal mind. Arman's friends and family, once confident he would return safely, began to feel the full weight of uncertainty. Each lead, each trace, revealed a level of premeditation that was terrifying. Zara understood that the clock was ticking, that the longer the criminal remained free, the greater the risk to Arman and potentially to others. The trail was faint, fragmented, and dangerous, but it was there. And Zara was determined to follow it to its source. It was now clear. This was not a simple disappearance. Arman had been drawn into a deliberate, well-executed plan. And uncovering the truth required navigating a maze of deception, hidden motives, and carefully erased evidence. The tension in the case was palpable, the stakes higher than anyone had anticipated, and every moment brought them closer to a revelation that would shock everyone involved. Zara Al-Mahdi had been following the trail for days, piecing together fragments of evidence. But the deeper she dug, the darker the picture became. The clues pointed toward someone who was not only cunning, but methodical. Someone who understood how to manipulate people and erase their tracks. Every lead, every anomaly in Arman's movements, suggested that his disappearance was not a random crime, but part of a carefully orchestrated scheme. The realization sent a chill down her spine. The person responsible had anticipated Arman's routines and vulnerabilities, and now it was up to her to anticipate theirs. Through a combination of digital forensics and street-level investigation, Zara identified a critical link, the mysterious figure labeled only as S in the dating app messages. Further digging into Doobie's criminal records and online networks revealed that S was actually Sameer Rahim, a man with a long history of elaborate scams and cons targeting tourists. Sameer had a reputation for creating highly sophisticated plots, using charm and deceit to lure victims into traps where they could be manipulated, robbed, or detained. His crimes were precise, leaving almost no trace, and authorities had struggled for years to catch him. Zara discovered that Sameer had targeted Arman with a combination of psychological manipulation and opportunistic planning. The messages on the app had been carefully crafted to exploit Arman's curiosity and trust. Sameer had promised to show him something rare, a wedding-related artifact that would be meaningful to him. In reality, it was a lure designed to isolate him from crowds, to lead him into a location where control could be maintained. Arman, despite his meticulous nature, had fallen into the trap because the plan was too sophisticated to detect. The abandoned industrial area where Arman had been last traced became a central focus of the investigation. Zara reviewed security footage, photographs, and GPS data, reconstructing the scenario with precision. She realized that Sameer had planned for contingencies, multiple escape routes, temporary hiding spots, and even false signals to confuse anyone tracking him. The struggle recorded on the security cameras suggested that when Arman hesitated or questioned the plan, Sameer had tried to intimidate him into compliance. The stakes were higher than Zara had initially imagined. Arman's life had been in real danger. Financial records provided further insight. There had been attempts to manipulate Arman into transferring large sums of money into offshore accounts. When he resisted, the plan escalated, turning from financial exploitation into physical confinement. Sameer's approach was calculated, blending deception, psychological pressure, and threat of violence. Every move had been premeditated, every interaction carefully designed to corner Arman into following instructions. It was a criminal mind operating with patience and precision, and Zara knew that confronting it directly would require extreme caution. The breakthrough came when Zara managed to trace a series of encrypted messages in digital breadcrumbs left inadvertently by Sameer. These traces led to a secluded warehouse on the outskirts of the city, a location consistent with previous sightings of Arman. Zara immediately contacted Dubai police, sharing her findings in detail. Authorities recognized the significance of the information. For the first time, they had a precise location where Arman could be found, and potentially the key to apprehending Sameer. By the 14th day, a coordinated operation was prepared. Police officers moved quietly toward the warehouse, while Zara guided them through the layout she had painstakingly reconstructed. Inside, the scene confirmed everything Zara had feared. Arman was alive, but visibly weakened and disoriented. The space showed signs of confinement and struggle, and scattered around were documents and items linking Sameer to previous crimes. It was clear that this was not an isolated incident. Arman had narrowly escaped becoming another statistic in Sameer's long history of victims. The discovery was both shocking and relieving. Arman had survived due to a combination of resilience, caution, and small opportunities he had exploited to leave subtle traces. The capture of the warehouse also provided evidence strong enough to identify and eventually arrest Sameer. What had begun as a simple wedding trip had become a harrowing ordeal, exposing the depth of deception that one person could wield. Arman's story, now unfolding with the truth, illustrated not just the danger of trusting strangers in unfamiliar environments, but also the importance of perseverance, investigation, and timely intervention in uncovering hidden crimes. 15 days had passed since Arman Qureshi had first vanished into the streets of Dubai, and the tension surrounding his disappearance had reached a breaking point. His family in Karachi was on edge, oscillating between hope and despair, while his friends replayed every detail of his last known movements, searching for any overlooked clue. For Arman, the ordeal had been a test of endurance, patience, and presence of mind. Isolated and confined in a small, dimly lit space inside the warehouse, he had relied on careful observation, subtle movements, and quick thinking to survive. Every decision could have meant the difference between life and death inside the warehouse. Arman had noticed patterns in Sameer Rahim's behavior. Sameer was meticulous, but overconfident, confident that his carefully planned trap would remain undiscovered. He left doors slightly ajar, miscalculated guard shifts, and underestimated Arman's awareness. Using these small lapses, Arman began leaving tiny clues, footprints, scuffed surfaces, and subtle disturbances that someone looking carefully might trace. He understood that escape on his own would be impossible. His survival depended on someone outside recognizing these hints. Meanwhile, Zara Al-Mahdi coordinated closely with Dubai police. Using the GPS data, surveillance footage, and encrypted message trails she had painstakingly collected, the authorities narrowed the search area to a secluded industrial sector miles from the city center. Zara explained to the team how Sameer had likely set up the warehouse, a place that could be monitored from the outside, controlled internally, and emptied quickly if necessary. Every piece of evidence she provided increased the likelihood of locating Arman. Before the situation escalated further, at dawn, a coordinated operation began. Police vehicles approached the warehouse quietly, officers moving with precision to minimize noise and avoid alarming the suspect. Zara guided them through the layout, describing the interior from her analysis of previous surveillance and digital traces. Every step was deliberate. The team knew that Sameer was armed with cunning, even if not with traditional weapons, and that Arman's life depended on timing and discretion. The tension was palpable. One wrong move could push the scenario into catastrophe. When the team entered the warehouse, the scene confirmed the extent of Sameer's planning. Makeshift barricades had been constructed and scattered personal items indicated confinement. But at the center, amidst overturned boxes and a faint layer of dust, Arman was found. He looked worn but alert, his eyes scanning the intruders as though calculating whether they were allies or threats. The moment he realized help had arrived, a wave of relief washed over him. The ordeal, terrifying and exhausting, was finally ending. The police quickly secured the premises, finding documents and digital evidence linking Sameer Rahim to multiple crimes involving tourists and travelers. Financial records, fake IDs, and photographs suggested a systematic pattern of deception and manipulation. Confirming what Zara had suspected, Sameer had been operating an elaborate network targeting unsuspecting individuals. Each victim had been lured, manipulated, and isolated, but Arman's careful, observant nature had allowed him to leave enough clues for authorities to intervene. Arman's return to Karachi was met with overwhelming relief. His family embraced him, grateful that their worst fears had not been realized. The ordeal, however, had left its mark. Arman carried a cautious awareness of the world that he had never known before. The experience revealed not just the vulnerability of travelers in unfamiliar environments, but also the resilience of a person who refused to surrender to fear. Sameer Rahim's arrest brought further closure. Authorities confirmed that the warehouse had been a central hub for his operations, and his confession revealed a pattern of crimes that spanned months and multiple victims. The case made headlines, shocking the public with the sophistication of his schemes and the audacity of his crimes. Arman's story, once a mysterious disappearance, had now become a cautionary tale, a narrative of deception, danger, and ultimately survival. In the end, the truth was more complex than anyone had imagined. What had started as a simple journey to attend a wedding had transformed into a harrowing confrontation with human cunning and malice. Arman's perseverance, combined with Zara's determination and the police's coordinated efforts, uncovered the hidden reality behind his disappearance. It was a story that would be remembered not only for the terror and suspense, but also for the courage, patience, and intelligence that turned a potential tragedy into a resolved mystery. The glittering city of Dubai, with all its beauty and complexity, had revealed its shadowed corners, reminding everyone that appearances could be deceiving, and that even in a world full of light and luxury, danger could linger quietly, waiting for the unsuspecting traveler. Arman had survived, and in doing so had ensured that the truth could finally be told.